Hey, before we get this video started, don't forget Ronnie McDowell is actually in Memphis tonight. He's at the Audubon Drive House. There's still tickets available. See the links in the description and the comments. And if you can't make it there in person, there's the pay-per-view. So make sure you catch that tonight. And let's get into the video. Happy birthday, Elvis. It is Elvis's 90th birthday today. I did release a video earlier this morning that I recorded yesterday. Are You Lonesome Tonight? I'm rereading the whole book, and I'm going to do it in larger chunks of time. So every video is going to be probably an hour, hour and a half. That way, for those of you that missed it or didn't really know where to look for it, or maybe didn't see part 1, part 2, stuff like that, it'll give you an opportunity. And yeah, so in Serena, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Serena. Ritz, apologize. R-A-E-T-Z. You said my biggest question maybe Desiree can answer is how her stepdad handled all the flower deliveries that came over the years. And the eek, I'm so happy. So glad we could do this for you. You've got your own channel. You should start making more videos. I saw the video of you and your husband doing your hair, which was awesome. And also, you know, I'm actually recording a couple segments today. One with Michael Peterson to kind of talk more about his career and how Elvis influenced him, as well as his spiritual side. And then I have my first in hopefully a series of 12 this year, which I'm going to be talking to 12 of you subscribers, and every month feature one of y'all. Now, you don't necessarily have to be on camera. If you don't feel like doing it, we can do a Zoom where you're just talking. But I want you to be able to tell your stories of how Elvis affected you in your life, favorite songs, favorite movies, and just give you a chance to have a voice in the world of Elvis. Because, like Elvis said, without his fans, he wouldn't be anywhere. And I want to continue that tradition for Elvis. So, email me, rareelvisphotos@gmail.com if you want to come on the channel. It doesn't have to be an hour and a half, doesn't have to be an hour, it could be 30 minutes, could be 15 minutes. And before we start reading this Elvis and Gladys, I want to announce that we'll have another segment with Billy Stanley. We are going to be doing the taping for that, next week, I believe. So probably next Thursday, next Friday, we'll have a new segment from him. And let's read, okay? Thank you for subscribing to this channel, by the way, all of you subscribers that are out there. And the super thanks that have come through, of course. And some of y'all have been sending me gifts, too, which is really nice. I appreciate that. It's not necessary. The monetary gifts are not necessary, but when you do, it's helpful. It's nice. I can buy more books. And we had a wonderful subscriber that sent us a bunch of books as well. And we will give some of those away this year, some giveaways. Giving back. That is what Elvis did. That is what she did. She gave back to the community and gave to us, the channel. All right, so Elvis and Gladys by Elaine Dundee. Mother and son, the untold story of a powerful and tragic love. The Boston Globe said nothing less than the best Elvis book yet. This book, I think, was written in 1985. Okay. So, a note to the reader. Let's start there. This is weird having a paperback in my hand instead of a gigantic hardcover. I like the hardbacks, but that's fine. This book fell off the shelf to give us some information for the Are You Lonesome Tonight? All right. To what must be the main question in the reader's mind and being presented with this book, namely, is there anything in it about Elvis that hasn't already been said? A note to the reader. To what must be the main question in the reader's mind in being presented with this book, namely, is there anything in it about Elvis that hasn't already been said? My answer is a resounding yes. For one thing, it seems extraordinary in Elvis's case that his maternal line has not been thoroughly explored in view of the fact that it is now accepted that his mother Gladys was the pivotal force in his life. By thoroughly explored, I do not mean the usual swift begat romp through the centuries, but a penetrating, detailed, and on-the-spot investigation that brings to life and to reason the personalities, as well as the times, customs, and traditions as they developed from the American Indian Wars, which led to Gladys's great-great-grandparents, William Mansell, and to his wife, to migrate to northeast Mississippi, and the subsequent Mansells via the neighboring counties of Itawamba and Pontotoc to Lee County, where is Tupelo in the county seat was born. Well, it's hard to read this small print. My goodness. I keep wanting to get closer to the camera, but I need to get closer to the book. Also lacking has been any detailed documented illumination of what Gladys was actually like growing up as a child, an adolescent, and a young woman prior to her marriage to Elvis's father. Nor for that matter have Elvis's formative years from his birth to the age of 13, when the family moved to Memphis, been given anything close to attention that they deserve. This is great. Love this. We're going to hear about Elvis as a young boy. Okay? And this is great. The reason why I chose to start reading this book, Elvis and Gladys, on Elvis's birthdays, is because guess what? Who gave birth to Elvis? Gladys did. Okay? And of course, you probably already heard the song I wrote for Elvis and Gladys. Gladys loved her son, you know, until that big old heart gave out. And there's no greater love than a mother's love. Okay. So, nor for that matter have Elvis's formative years from his birth to age of 13 when the family moved to Memphis been given anything close to the attention they deserve. Here, as with his mother, people who have never before allowed themselves to be interviewed spoke out for the first time. Many facts, unknown, came to light, along with the events previously mentioned but glossed over now, which now assume their proper, devastating importance. New information providing a far firmer foundation than has been laid before enabled me to rebuild Elvis's character and, as I followed him and Gladys through their lives together, to project a portrait of each of them in far sharper focus and more vivid colors. I've come to believe that it is only through this kind of historical approach, with this emphasis on the interweaving of families, generations, and cultures, that the true meaning of Elvis's life unfolds. For me, at least, there is no other way. The author states, I arrived in Tupelo, Mississippi, Elvis's birthplace, in April of 1981 to remain there with frequent side trips to Memphis and to the University of Mississippi at Oxford for 5 months. Although my knowledge of the South was not exactly negligible, having spent my university years at Sweetbriar College in Lynchburg, Virginia, my awareness of the mores and manners of the South was broad and superficial, rather than deep and concentrated. In any case, that was a long time ago. If any of my college mates had come from Mississippi or Tennessee, as they undoubtedly did, I had forgotten them. I wanted to enter a strange land, free and unencumbered, to await what would befall me. There must be something in a willingness to meet one's luck halfway, for I arrived in Tupelo on a Friday, and by Sunday I was listening to a sermon delivered by Brother Frank Smith, who had been a preacher at the First Assembly of God Church during the last years, that the Presleys were members of its congregation. Afterwards, I was invited to join the Smiths for their Sunday meal prepared by Frank's wife, Corinne Randall, as she had been before her marriage, who though 6 years older than Elvis, had grown up in the same neighborhood. Becoming friends, Corinne and I soon fell into the habit of meeting for afternoon or evening coffee 2 or 3 times a week. During these meetings, I questioned her avidly on every aspect of her childhood and adolescence in East Tupelo: the sights, sounds, smells, the weather, the work, the clothes, the schooling, the recreations, the First Assembly of God Church, the Depression, and the Recession. And as we talked, she found herself becoming as absorbed as I in the reconstruction of this particular past. She showed me her photograph album and generously loaned me several pertinent pictures. For her information and her considerable and consistent help, it was entirely through her good graces that Annie Presley, who had previously refused to be interviewed, agreed to talk to me. And for her lucid descriptions of those bygone times, I owe a special thanks. My next important friend in Tupelo was Phyllis Harper, feature editor and writer of the deservedly popular, it seems to me, column in the Tupelo Daily Journal. So you got Corinne Randall. Maybe I said Colleen, but it's Corinne Randall, Brother Frank Smith's wife. And then now you have a new friend, Phyllis Harper, from the Tupelo Daily Journal, whose work has recently found its way into the prestigious Southern anthologies. She too was a native of the county, having been raised at Fawn Grove, which was a farm in Itawamba County, which is touched on in relation to Gladys's forebears. It was Gladys who urged me to contact Professor Von Grisham when I visited the University of Mississippi. He had just completed a definitive sociological treatise, Tupelo, Mississippi, from Settlement to Industrial City, 1860 to 1970. For his letting me read it before publication and for his several enlightening discussions with me on the subject afterwards, I am deeply obliged. Phyllis Harper also wrote an article about me in the Tupelo Daily Journal under the fine-sounding title, Established Writer in Tupelo to Research Presley, which, as well as including my past published work, emphasized that the biography I planned on Presley would be a serious one. She added in closing that I was interested in talking not only to those who knew the Presleys, but others who could tell me something of the local history and times of his early years in Tupelo. This article opened many doors for me, not only ones that might have been shut had I attempted to storm them cold, but doors I had no way of knowing even existed. Herman Irwin, manager of a large insurance company in Tupelo, was one of the people who contacted me in response to Phyllis's column. His father and mother, Lynn and Lily Mae Irwin, had been friends of Gladys's mother and father, Robert and Doll Smith, and had worked shares alongside of them on Burke's farm. So, Herman Irwin. Okay. They had been friends of Gladys's mother and father. Okay, so that's important to know, I guess, here. These are the things that sometimes we kind of gloss over and don't read them, because we want to get to the good stuff. We want to hear Elvis's name, Gladys's name, and so this is good background research, and that's why I'm kind of stopping and talking about it a little bit. All right, Lynn and Lily Mae Irwin had been friends of Gladys's mother and father, Robert and Doll Smith, and had worked shares alongside of them on Burke's farm. Okay, so Gladys's parents. Both Herman Irwin's parents were still living. Herman, after first driving me or carrying me, to employ the 18th century term still in usage there, to the exact place where the Smiths had made their home for that tragically short time, of which nothing is left to mark it but rose bushes that were rambling and wild, then carried me further around the environment, pointing out the various landmarks which had been anecdotal bearings of the Smiths and their way of life. Finally, he took me to his parents' house. Then both Lynn and Lily Mae Irwin reminisced in a very lively manner, not only of the Smiths, but of the many Smith children, of whom Gladys was the fourth. Lily Mae Irwin further helped me by writing down at her son's request a resume of her own life, which included more reminiscences of the Smiths, the invalid doll, and the sudden death of Bob. I have much more to thank Herman Irwin for, notably his wife, Billy Dale, who runs the Senior Citizens Recreation Center, and who took time from her busy schedule to assemble those particular people who had personally known the Smiths and Presleys, so that I might interview them separately and at length. Through the years, the Presleys had kept close contact with the old Tupelo friends. That's good to know. Much valuable information came out of those meetings. Again, it was Herman who arranged for me to meet Mertice Finley Collins, whose family had farmed across the way from the Smiths in the Gilbo community before they moved to Burke Farm. To me, especially for the accuracy and precision of her memory for names, dates, and places as befits an ex-school teacher, my odd appreciation. So this is important. We talk about the whole Lucy's Are You Lonesome Tonight, and everybody, the naysayers are the sayers, and they criticize. How could she remember these details? She was also a teacher. Anyhow, and she, so, this author is very thankful, Elaine Dunny is very thankful to Mrs. Collins for her memory of names, dates, and places. Okay? Further, it was Mrs. Collins who led me to Roy Turner. And one more time, so even Elvis and the Twilight of Memory, Juno Winico, this book was written 10 years after Lucy, in the same time period of the early 50s, 53, 54, 55, 56 area. And she remembers everything, and nobody questions June. So, I just want to point that out as we're trying to document all this stuff and all these books and historical Elvis. So, further, it was Mrs. Collins who led me to Roy Turner. For about a month now, though information had been coming at me hard and fast, I had been feeling the increasing need of solid, tangible things like documents. I had also decided that in order to tell the story best, I must concentrate on only one particular branch, from which Gladys had directly descended. Gladys's father was a Smith, her mother was a Mansell. Which side would I choose? As it turned out, the records chose it for me. Roy Turner, when I first met him on a Sunday afternoon in May of 1981, in his pleasant house with his wife Debbie and his 2 children, was a brilliant 28-year-old. A 5th-generation Tupelo resident, he then held the title of Corresponding Secretary of the Northeast Mississippi Historical and Genealogical Society, of which he was now president. He had at the time 2 publications under his belt: Lee County Marriage Records 1867 to 1900 and Lee County Cemeteries, and was just finishing his 3rd, Itawamba Settlers. I bet you one of our subscribers that gives me a lot of information, since it sends me a lot of genealogical stuff, is probably going to enjoy this book, and she's going to do some of the research on her own, I bet. The Turner's workroom, they work as partners, was a formidable affair of the tools of his trade, Sandy Kirkendall. Genealogical tomes, photographic equipment, and a huge duplicating machine, but it was over the breakfast table that we sat, according to my journal, from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. to that day, while he pored over marriage records, census records, school records, cemetery records, old city directories, maps, and plats. At the same time, he attempted to crash course me into the arcane ways of genealogy and the clues and the intuitive leaps you had to take before turning up a documented solution. It was better than a detective story. Was it then we decided to follow the Mansell line? I think so. Tupelo was full of Mansells, one of whom, L.Z. Mansell, Roy knew well, and their migration was from nearby Alabama, while Gladys's great-grandfather Smith, according to the 1880 census, was from South Carolina, further away. When we discovered that Gladys descended from the Mansells on both sides, her maternal and paternal line, that clinched it. So both sides. There was a moment in June I won't easily forget. I was in Memphis, and I had just spent an exhausting and irritating day in high summer. One contact had failed to turn up. Another had proved worthless. Still another was out of town for a month, and in the passivity of this sort of frustration, it provoked something. I sat in my air-frozen room at the Holiday Inn, wondering if it was all worth it. Suddenly I was ringing Roy in Tupelo to see how he was doing down there. "I've been waiting for you to come back," he said. "You remember I told you I traced our Mansells back to Marion County, Alabama? Well, I got in touch with Dorothy Stalcup, the head of the Genealogical Society in the area, and she got me in touch with Joel Palmer in Hamilton, who's working on the Mansell line, and we matched up the lines with our charts, and Elvis's great-great-great-grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee called Mourning White Dove." This is something that I see all the time. There's always a picture out there online of Mourning White Dove, but it really is not her, by the way. That photo that's associated with her is not. Just so you know, now I don't think there is a picture of Mourning White Dove, because we're talking, what is this? Let me find this again. Great-great-great-grandmother. So you got Elvis, you got his mom, Gladys, then you got her mother, and her mother. So if Gladys was born somewhere around the 1910, 1915 area, I think, somewhere in there, her mother would have been born in 1870 or 80. That mother, after that, grandmother, would have been around 1840, 1810. So they'd have had some great camera equipment to have with that great photo in 1810, or right around that time that his great-great-great-grandmother would have been born. All right, so let's get back into this. My special thanks then to Joel Palmer, who, when we visited him, showed us his documents. conducted us around the Mansell and Mansell Palmer graves, introduced us to some Alabama Mansells, and imparted to us much valuable information about the family. For the rest of my stay, Roy and I worked as a team. He showed me through many cemeteries where Elvis's ancestors lay, searched out many people who had known Elvis and the family, aided and abetted me during many interviews, and conducted others on his own. For only a portion of what I owe him, I refer the reader to my dedication. Roy was also with me when I first visited Gladys's eldest sister, Lillian Smith Mann Fortenberry, whom I was to see and correspond with often. Gladys's eldest sister, okay? Lillian Smith Mann Fortenberry. All right. If it is true, as I had been told, that there was family likeness between the two sisters, it is easy to see wherein lay Gladys's charm. Lillian Fortenberry at 78 is a woman of striking appearance, so Gladys's older sister would have been born in somewhere around 1905 to 1907. Okay, so I guess I was fairly right with Gladys's birth year, somewhere around there. Her easy directness and openness of manner, together with a native dignity that never conceals a sense of fun, even mischief, immediately sets off sympathetic vibrations. I always looked forward to seeing her. As with many elderly people, she speaks with great clarity about the distant past, and of Gladys's last few years with frankness, forcefulness, and feeling. I would also like to express my gratitude for the contributions of the following: Bill Mitchell, the late Coley Mitchell, Verna Turner, Ernest Bowen, the Reverend Frank Smith, Mavis Crystal. There is a long list of people here, okay? I don't want to get through this list because it's just too long. So let's get on to part one, okay? Before we do that, let's listen to the song I wrote.
She held him close to her heart,
my mother's love, in dedication
from the very start.
To Gladys.
Through every joy and fear, she kept him near and dear, with a love that's pure and true. In everything she'd do, a mother's guiding light shone through the Elvis night. Oh, Gladys loved her son until her big old heart gave out. And there's no greater love than a mother's love. Her hand he found peace, and all her worries would not cease. There shares a bond that never fades, it loves me tender shades. Oh, Gladys loved her son until her big old heart gave out. And there's no greater love than a mother's love. Found peace, and all her worries would not cease. They shares a bond that never fades, it loves me tender shades. Oh, Gladys loved her son until her big old heart gave out. And there's no greater love than a mother's love. With every note he'd sing, he danced on her heartstrings. A melody so sweet made their bond complete. Oh, Gladys loved her son until her big old heart gave out. And there's no greater love than a mother's love. Yeah, there's no greater love than a mother's love.
All right, we're back. There is no greater love than a mother's love. Chapter 1. Captain Marvel Jr. By the time Elvis was in first grade, he and his schoolmate, Wayne Ernest, had evolved a system that would both double their money and their reading pleasure. They swapped comic books. Elvis sometimes walking the mile over to Wayne's place on Saturday afternoon to complete the transaction. Elvis was already immersed in the adventures of the Lone Ranger, Hopalong Cassidy, Tarzan, Batman, and Superman when his secret life suddenly took a dramatic new turn. He discovered Freddy Freeman in the comic book series Captain Marvel's Adventures. There on page 267, young Freddy made his entrance and very nearly his exit, finishing off a boat with his grandpa. "Look, Grandpa, somebody fell in the water over there." "Put about and we'll rescue him," said Grandpa. In fact, they have rescued the diabolical Captain Nazi, who repays their soft-heartedness by socking old Grandpa overboard, and then, grabbing the oar out of Freddy's hand, whacks him into the briny deep as well. By the time Captain Marvel flies to the rescue, Grandpa has drowned, and Freddy is no more than a symbolic hand stretching up from the sea. Swooping down and sweeping up Freddy's almost lifeless form in his arms, Captain Marvel says, "You're in bad shape, youngster. I'd better get you to the hospital right away." Well, easier flown to than entered. Unimpressed by the astounding figure cut by the captain and the desperate condition of his charge, an officious hospital attendant bars their way. "This is highly irregular," he sputters. "This is a private institution. You can't come in." Responding with a simple "nuts," Captain Marvel walks through a wall and into an operating room where he curtly orders a surprised doctor to get to work on the young boy. Then, uttering the magic word, "Shazam!" the captain is transformed into plain, everyday Billy Batson, sitting in the waiting room anxiously asking a nurse, "How is he? Will he live?" "The doctors say there's no hope. Even if he lived, he'd be a cripple for life. We're doing all we can, but we don't expect him to last the night out." Well, Billy waits till midnight to sneak into room 15, hoists Freddy in a fireman's hall, carries him downstairs and out, and, spellbound, 6-year-old Elvis read on as Billy walked down the long ancient underground hall where he first met the sorcerer Shazam, and stared with interest at the panel depicting Billy carrying the dying Freddy on his shoulder through a tunnel lined with gargoyles labeled pride, envy, greed, and hatred. Billy laid Freddy before an empty, dust-covered throne. He lit a long, extinguished torch, and the flame flared up. There was a rumbling sound, a lightning bolt, a crash of thunder, and the ghost of a dead wizard appeared. "Who calls old Shazam from his 1,000 years of sleep?" asked the wizard. "I, Billy Batson, call you. There's a man loose above, a man called Captain Nazi, who's destroying everything. I brought you a boy who is dying as a result of Captain Nazi's cruelty. You must help him as you once helped me." Rising from his throne, the wizard pronounces, "What has already come to pass cannot be changed by any power of mine, but you, as Captain Marvel, can, if you will, pass on to this boy some of the mighty powers I once gave you. Billy Batson, speak my name." Shazam! And the last panel of the page is filled with the black clouds and yet another lightning bolt. Elvis turned the page and read on. The wraith of Shazam vanished, and in his place stands the familiar red-clad figure, Captain Marvel. The dying boy lies at his feet. In the second panel, Freddy springs miraculously back to life, exclaiming simply, "Why, it's Captain Marvel!" And the third panel on the page gives itself over to a third lightning bolt. The next panel stretches clear across the page. Captain Marvel stands astride in his familiar snappy red bodysuit trimmed with the yellow arm bracelets and his familiar yellow boots and belt, and sporting his familiar yellow lightning bolt emblem on his chest. His flowing white cape flares rakishly on one shoulder. An enormous book of knowledge rests on the wizard's throne, and the brazier is still aflame. In the foreground, profiled in an aura of light, stands Freddy, whole, healed, and triumphant. His hair is shining black. A lock falls down on his forehead, and he's wearing sideburns, and his hair grows down the base of his neck. Although his bodysuit is blue and his cape is red, his outfit is otherwise an exact replica of the captain's in every detail, including the yellow lightning bolt emblem. "I'm all well again. I'm like you," he exclaims in wonder. "That's right, you're Captain Marvel, Jr." Looking at them standing together, the captain and his junior, We are instantly struck by the differing techniques used in the drawing of Freddy and Captain Marvel Jr. from that of Billy and Captain Marvel. Billy Captain Marvel is drawn in the stylized cartoon strip tradition. As the captain, he is beetle-browed, pin-eyed, muscle-bound, and lockjawed, while as Billy, his features suggest that a child of 8 has delineated them on the blank oval of his face. Freddy Marvel Jr., on the other hand, has been obviously and sensitively copied from a most appealing adolescent life model. He looks, in fact, exactly as Elvis, from adolescence to the end of his life, strove to make himself look. On the last page, Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr. are flying through the air, deep in conversation. "Now you have all the powers I have. Use them to fight the forces of evil wherever they appear," says Captain Marvel. "And do I change back to my own shape too, like you do to Billy Batson?" "Yes, you will have to go through life in your own form. But whenever you need me, speak my name, and as Captain Marvel Jr., you'll be able to do the things that I do. Now go back into the hospital and get well, and then I'm going to send you into Master Comics to take care of Captain Nazi." "Goodbye, Captain Marvel," replied Junior stalwartly, and with the lightning bolt panel that precedes all changes in psyche and geography, Freddy wakes up in the hospital exclaiming, "Gosh, I wonder if it's all really true. Well, I'll be out of here tomorrow and then I'll find out." And he does find out. It is all true. Although, as Captain points out, the poor boy is destined to carry on with the crippled leg as a souvenir of his encounter with Captain Nazi. Yet, what the evil captain does not know is that the innocent laddie crippled is now the most powerful boy in the world, Captain Marvel Jr. Thus, Captain Marvel Jr. began starring in his own series beginning in January 1942. It was 6 years to the month after Elvis was born. It was 6 years to the month after Elvis was born. Yeah, okay. Well, Elvis was born in 35, but yeah. Starring in January of 1942. I don't know if that's correct or not, but 7 years. I mean, that he started having the series in 1942, and interesting. Okay, I'm sure that maybe I misread something, but Elvis started reading this when he was 6, I believe, or 7. Doesn't matter, okay? Well, that's the start of the book, okay? It is Elvis's birthday. I've got recordings and tapings I got to do today. I'm going to try to do a couple more readings if I can. Enjoy it. Enjoy the movies you're going to listen to. The songs you're going to listen to, the movies that you're going to get to see. Hopefully I'll have some time later myself. And I know that Ronnie McDowell did invite me to Memphis to go tour through the Audubon House. Memphis is about a 3-hour drive for me. And normally I would have taken him up on it. But I had to. I've got some tapings with Michael Peterson and with Mel. That's part of it. There'll be another time, I hope. Okay? Happy birthday, Elvis. And to all you subscribers as well, enjoy the day. Bye now.